but I teach people step by step. Hang on, sorry, I've just got some weird pop-up thing. Okay, don't need to read that. Sorry, I teach people step by step how to paint. It's super easy, and I do that here online in the magical world of internetness and in my studio. Welcome to this week's episode of Hearty Tips with Silka. Today I am going to give you a sneak peek into my Aotearoa summer painting. This one here behind me. Which I will be teaching in the studio soon, and it's also an on-demand painting as well. But today I'm going to show you how to paint this beautiful pohutukawa tree in bloom, and I'm going to show you, you'll see that it's just so super easy. It's easy and fun. Yay. So that's my goal today, is to show you that painting is easy, so that maybe more of you might want to give it a go. So say hi as you come on and let me know where you're joining me from. I'm going to switch camera angles now so I can get painting. Let me see if I can get it in the right place. Oh, wobble, wobble. Let's see if I can get it in the right place for you. There we go. Right, so I am going to be painting. I've got two brushes today. I've got a small number 1 liner brush. You can use anything roughly the same size is fine. Small number 1 liner brush, and I've got a 1/2 inch flat brush as well. These are both synthetic brushes, so I get a nice clean finish. But you can use anything of similar size. They don't have to be exactly the same size. So first off, I'm going to mix my tree trunk colour. Alright, we're going to paint the tree trunk first. Okay, so I'm going to mix a sort of pohutukawa trunky grey. Hello Heather, hey, nice to see you from Auckland. Yay, hi Heather. And yay that you still call me mum. That's a long story that I might share with you. I'm not actually her mum, but one day I might share that with you. I love it when she does that. It means a lot to someone who can't have kids. So yes, I'm going to mix the tree trunk colour. I'm going to start with black, white and red. Now I'm going to make it a sort of a dirty grey. Now when I mix colours, I always start with the lighter colours first, and then you can add the darker colours a little bit at a time, because darker colours are really dominant, so you don't need as much. So I always start with the lighter colours and add little bits of the darker colour as I go until I'm happy with the colour. So we want a sort of a mid-tone barky sort of grey. So we'll just keep adding black in. Now it will dry a little bit darker once it's on your canvas, so I'm probably not going to go too dark today. And just because I want to carry the flavour of the whole painting in, I'm going to add a little dip of red as well, just because the whole painting is a bit red, you know, with the sunset behind it. We're not doing the sunset today, but even the pohutukawa trees have got a nice big red sort of splurge of colour. So I'm going to carry that through. So once I've got a colour that I'm happy with for my trunk, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of water. Okay, now if you've painted with me before, you'll know I do this a lot, because when you get big blobs, if you get blobs on your brush, it's difficult to sort of control where your lines go. So it's really important to just thin your paint a little bit and get it to the right consistency. Alright, I have actually done a blog on this, if you want to go to my website and read it, about mixing the paint to the perfect consistency. It just makes it easier when you thin your paint a little bit. It goes on a lot more fluidly, and you have a bit more control, and you can get you know, your lines easier. Now if you're painting for the first time, I just want to demonstrate pressure on your brush determines how thick or thin your line will be. Alright, so if you're pushing lightly, you'll get a nice thin line. If you push harder, you'll get a much thicker line. Alright, so it's all about pressure. Light or hard will determine how thick or thin your line is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint the two outside trunks. I'm just going with the smaller one here, it's easier to show you. I'm going to paint the two outside edges of my tree trunk first, just to establish where my tree is going to be. Now I painted this on sideways like I'm doing today, because I don't want to be in front of you. So my trunks tend to go a little bit wonky, but if you're right in front of it, you're going to be good. So to decide roughly where you want your pohutukawa blossom to be, all right, and then do the outside branch and we're going to go down to a big trunk here. I'm just going to take it off the page, all right? So this one will go off the page here, and my outside branch will go there. All right, so we've established the outer shape of our tree, all right? Now, if your paint's going on a bit thick or a bit dry, then just do that dip in water and mix in. If you're getting blobs on your brush, just sort of do a twirl and pull, and you'll get most of the paint off. Okay, so I'm going to add all the branches in the middle now, and they get thinner as they get to where the pohutukawa tree is. So my main pohutukawa tree will be all the way up here. So I'm literally just going to do lots of thin branches getting thicker as they get closer. Maybe we can do a one dead one out there. As they get closer to the trunk of the tree, and the branches will get thicker as they come in. And I'm just going to sort of do lots of random ones. I'm a little bit making this up as I go along, which is the joy of it. If you're too prescriptive with art, that's something I've really discovered early on. If you're too prescriptive about getting it exact or being perfect, you won't enjoy it as much. You know, it's just a lot more enjoyable if you're a little bit looser and freer with it, and you know, just sort of making it up as you go along makes it a little bit more fun. I'm literally just doing a few squiggles, the odd branch here and there. Now all my blossoms will come over the top of this, so you can do as many branches or as few as you want. And I'm just using the very tip of my brush, so especially for the bits that are closer to the tree that are thinner, and as I get further down I'm putting a little bit more pressure on my brush just to get the branches to be a bit thicker. All right, so all branches, generally speaking, branches on trees will get thicker as they get further away from, well, as they get closer to the trunk of the tree. So I'm just going to put a few more in here. So we've done our outside ones. So say hi if you're just coming on. If I've done this right today, I should be streaming to YouTube today as well. So I've just created my new YouTube channel, which is a little bit exciting. There's not a whole lot there at the moment. There's a free painting tutorial if you want to grab it. Some nice sunset, go nicely with your pohutukawa. But yes, this is the first time, I think, if I've done it right, I'm streaming live to YouTube at the same time as Facebook. Ooh. Give me a comment if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. That would be very helpful to know where you're watching from. Are you seeing me on Facebook right now as we paint our pohutukawa blossoms? I can't paint and talk at the same time. Type Facebook if you're watching on Facebook, or YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And maybe you're watching on the replay. Type live if you're watching this live, or type replay if you're watching the replay. So I'm just filling in my trunk now. Just literally still with just this one colour. And you want to do a nice bumpy sort of rough edge, because pohutukawa trees just aren't really that bumpy, aren't that smooth. They're all bumpy and rough. I'm just going to put one more in here maybe. Now I've got none of them overlapped, so I might just do one that's overlapped and going out the other side. There. Cool. And up there maybe. Getting thinner as I get closer to where the leaves will be. So, and thicker as I get closer to the trunk of the tree. Have I missed any? Just add one in there. I'm literally just making this up as I go along, because that's just more fun and more relaxing. There's no prescription of how it has to be. So that's our trunk. We've got all our branches. So they all get thinner as you get closer to where the leaves are. Now we've got on my Aotearoa summer painting, the light is coming from this side here. All right, so we're going to add some highlights onto the left sides of our tree and our branches, and we're going to put some shadows on the right side of our tree and our branches. All right, So the light's coming from the left-hand side. So if you imagine if there was a beam of light where it would hit, we're going to put the highlights there. All right. So we're going to just use, I'm going to wipe most of the brush off my paint. No, wait, the other way around. Most of the paint off my brush. And I'm not going to wash it though, because I kind of want a little bit of the black to still mix in. And I'm just going to dip my brush in white. And anywhere the sun would hit, so the left-hand side of any branches, I'm just going to add a little bit of white. Now you want to do this while your paint is still wet, so that it mixes a little bit with the paint that's there, all right? So you don't get like a total white line. You get the black and the white, you know, your pohutukawa colour and the white mixing together and creating that sort of lighter patch on your branch. Cool. Now once, obviously, eventually your brush will pick up more paint, so you want to dip in white again, and we just want to create all of these light shadows on the left sides and the tops where the sun would hit. Now careful not to lean on your painting. I'm a shocker for doing that, and then I get paint here, and then I'll move my hand and oh lordy me, there's a big blob of paint somewhere where I didn't intend it to be. So I'm just going to go on the left side, dipping again in my white on the left side, and I'm being a little bit rough with this just because the trunks are quite rough and I don't want to get too serious about it, you know. I want to relax and enjoy the process. Adding a few random stray strokes here and there and just blending that back a bit. If it's too white, you probably can't see that. I'll hold it up close for you in a second. So just adding all the left sides of the branches. It's quite small, so you probably can't see it. If I hold it up closer, there you go, you can see I've added the highlights on some of those branches on the one side there and on my trunk. Probably could add a few more. So once we add the shadows as well, that's really going to pop even more. I'll probably add a bit more there just to really give it a highlight. So anything that would be underneath wouldn't get the sun on it, so you don't want to be putting your highlights there. All right, now it's going to look very weird, and something I say all the time in my virtual paint parties and for my studio paint parties is do not judge your painting till it's finished, because until you have all the pieces in play, all the strokes finished, all the colors you want, your painting is going to look a little weird, and it's not sort of right to the end when you put all your finishing touches on and bring it all together. That's when your painting really comes together. So it's really key when you're painting not to lose heart and not to feel a bit despondent and think, oh no, it's not working, because it's not gonna work completely until it's finished. You know, you have to wait until you got all the pieces in play, all the strokes done. Then it will be like, wow, look what I made, and you'll love it. Okay, so I'm nearly finished. So everywhere the sun would hit, so imagine if you had like the sun over here and you drew a straight line from the sun right across here. Wherever that line would hit the tree, that's where you want your highlights to be. All right. Okay, so I've got a few more in there, and I've got that one's quite bright, but I just par it back. If it is too bright, you just go over it a few more times, and because your tree is still wet, it'll blend. See, it'll blend a little bit more with the paint that's underneath. So there you can see I've done a few on my highlights on the one side of the tree. That one's probably a little too bright. We'll just par that back a little bit. And now we're going to do the opposite, and we are going to essentially add the shadows. All right. So hopefully you're all getting a nice effect with your highlights happening. And now we're going to add the shadows, and I'm literally just going to dip my brush in black and put some darker black on the left hand side, on the right hand side. So everywhere that, if you had the line that you drew going the other way, so from this side that way, everywhere that line would hit is where you now want to put your dark shadows. and that will, once you've got your 3 colours, rotate your canvas if you need to. Sometimes it's easier to just turn your canvas around a bit for easier access. In fact, I'm going to turn it upside down, maybe even one more turn. There we go, one more turn, that's it. Now I've got easier access. So everywhere the sun won't hit is where you're doing now, and it's just a very light touch with a very tip of your brush. And remember, if you've got blobs on your brush, just do what I call the twirl and pull, and that will pull most of the paint off the brush and leave you with a nice clean tip. And like I said, having your paint a little bit more fluid with a bit of water in it will make it go on just a little bit easier. So I'm just adding all my shadows now. Now your brush is going to pick up the wet paint as you paint, so you'll have to keep dipping and just adding paint to your brush. If you end up with a little bit more than you want, don't worry, you can always take it off again a little bit. So it's looking like a bit of a boring tree for now, but it's not until we get all the leaves on and all our blossoms on. It's just so key not to judge your painting until it's finished. So we're just adding our shadows here. I don't know if you can see, I'll hold it a bit closer so you can see. Now that I've got the highlights and the shadows, you can see that it's really created a bit more of a 3-dimensional form to my tree. I haven't done that one side yet. You can see the branches are starting to look a little bit more 3-dimensional. This is where you can also bring these down. If you bring your shadows all the way down, you can really define a branch, and decide which one's in the front or not. Oh, hang on. I don't want to paint. It's just easier to rotate your canvas sometimes than contort yourself into a strange shape. So how are we doing so far? Are you managing this okay? It's not too complicated, so you should be getting a nice tree trunk happening by now. And again, I just really stress not to try to be too perfect about it. Often when you're really loose with your brush strokes, you end up getting way better results. I'm just putting a few random ones in down here as well, just to give that impression of bark, a lumpy bumpy bark. Okay. So now we've done our tree trunk. What we're going to do now is mix our leaf colour. All right, this is the fun bit. We're going to add all the leaves on our pohutukawa tree. So I'm going to switch to my 1/2-inch synthetic brush. It's just a flat brush, so it's a nice easy one to use, and it's going to give us nice leafy texture, so to speak. So I'm going to mix my leaf green, my light leaf green. So I'm going to use cool yellow and cobalt blue, and again I'm going to start with the lighter yellow colour. Now remember that you can use any yellow and any blue really. Have a play, have an experiment with how the colours work together. So again, I've used a lot of yellow and not much blue, all right, because the darker colours are the more dominant colours, so the more, you don't need as much of them. So I'm just going to put a little bit more in and just keep mixing until you're happy with the green that you've got. This has gone a little bit more blue than I wanted, maybe. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, it's gone a little bit more blue than I wanted, so I'm going to put a little bit more yellow back in till I get a nice green. Now I'm going to use the dark green as well later. We're going to use the two colours together to add a bit of depth to our pohutukawa tree, adding highlights and shadows. So just keep mixing your colour till you're happy, till you get your nice lighter green pohutukawa. And then I've got a deep green as well that I'm going to add to it in a minute. So I'm going to paint all my leaves, and I'm going to paint them sort of in clump shape. So it's not just random leaves. I'm going to sort of create clumps, so like where you'd imagine, so where there'd be a branch, the branches would continue and they would create a sort of a round clump of branches. I'm going to do sort of slightly curved, and I'm going to leave a bit of room for where the darker colours will come on top, the darker greens. So if you imagine each branch goes up, and then off the end of that branch you've got these sort of balls of, you know, oval shaped balls of leaves. All right, and then obviously we can't see all the branches, so I'm just going to keep creating clumps, and I'm just using short curved strokes, and I'm using a decent amount of paint, and I'm holding my brush parallel to the canvas. If you hold it too close out, it kind of too perpendicular, it kind of just brushes the paint around a bit, but all the paint is in the belly of the brush, which is the sides of the brushes, so the more parallel you hold it to your canvas, the more paint it's going to put down. All right, so this is where you decide how big you want your tree to be. Just sort of keep going. Now, pohutukawa trees are just the most amazing New Zealand tree. That, you know, if you're watching this and you're not from New Zealand, we love our pohutukawa trees. They bloom at Christmas time, so it's known as the Kiwi Christmas tree. It's just the most awesome tree. Now you don't have to paint a pohutukawa tree. You can essentially do any sort of tree you want. You can put different coloured blooms on if you want. You can do like a jacaranda tree and make it purple, you know, purple blooms. I'm just going to overlap onto the branches, make sure there's no branches just sort of randomly sticking out. Make sure there's a few leaves going over the top just to bring them all together like that. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to paint my darker leaves. I'm going to just sort of get most of the paint off my brush, just going to give it a bit quick wipe, and I'm going to use that darker green, and I'm going to overlap, and I'm going to create some darker patches. All right, now thinking about roughly where those clumps were, I'm going to create those darker patches at the bottom of those clumps. All right, so I'm going to just create patches of dark and light, and I'm not going to just fill the whole thing in evenly. I'm going to, you know, be a bit random about it, but I'm going to create areas of interest, of light areas and dark interest essentially. So you can see I dribbled my green paint there, but it's the joy of painting. There's nothing really that you can't fix. So I'm making these shapes of, you know, these clusters of leaves, and I'm doing some sort of slightly curved upwards, some slightly curved downwards, and I'm just going to keep covering my canvas until there's no white left showing through. All right, so it's just lovely. Now make sure you have different shades of greens, and they remain visible. You don't want to just blend it all together and go over it so much that you only end up with one shade of green. You want to, you know, make sure there's your light green and your dark green is still visible. And now we're mixing, the paint is mixing on our brush and it's mixing on our canvas. If you've just joined us, say hi. Thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying my little free tutorial here. Now you want to make sure you're not mixing, you know, going over your paint so much that you're losing some of your light greens as well. All right. Now I've almost got enough. I'm going to make it nice and thick. Now this tree is part of a piece of, if you haven't seen it already, this tree is a piece of my Aotearoa summer painting, which was created in winter because it was just horribly cold and wintry, and I just wanted something summery and cheerful. And this tree, pohutukawa trees, always bloom in summer, so I was just wanting to create a bit of a summer warmth happiness. So this is part of Aotearoa summer, is the pohutukawa tree I'm showing you today. Now that one is actually available as an on-demand painting if you want to paint the whole thing. And I think we're painting it in studio. Yes, we are. We're painting it in studio on the 30th of March as well, if you want a whole studio experience with me giving you afternoon tea and step-by-step instructions, and also all your materials. You'll get all your materials as well. On demand, I'll give you a whole supply list. I'll tell you what colours, what paintbrushes, everything I'm using to create my painting. Lovely. And of course it's on demand video, so you can watch it anytime you like. You can paint in your pajamas, your onesies, with a glass of wine, whatever you like. All right, now once we've got all our leaves on, making sure that there's areas of light and dark, I'm going to again just wipe my brush. I'm not going to clean it. I want a little bit of green still in there, and I'm going to just dip the corner of my brush, known as the toe of the brush, and I'm in black. And you do not want too much, right? Black is like the most dominant color. All right, and I'm just going to use that to add some darker patches, and this is how we really define those clumps, those you know, those bulbs of leaves. And we're just going to use that and go over down below where the shadows would be. So you imagine where, you know, remember our sun's coming from this side, going this way. So we're just going to use the black to add a few darker patches at the bottom. And within our painting, we're gonna create a few patches of dark as well. All right, and again, don't judge it till it's finished. We're just layering all of this. Now Heather, I think you were going to paint with watercolors. Let me know how that's going. Is that working for you? Hopefully it is. I'm imagining you're getting quite a different result now that we're layering the colors. Hopefully it's still looking fabulous. So I'm just creating these areas of light and dark. Not too many at the top, but just a few color patches. And again, it's really going to come together once we get our red blossoms on. Cool. So you don't really have to be too prescriptive about it. Just create a few areas of light and dark. Lovely. Now if you've got an area that you've gone too black with, that you're not happy with, just put a bit more of the green back on top. All right, easy. So I might just try that here. I think I've probably gone a little bit dark there, so just put a bit more green back on top. Voila, all better, fixed. Cool. Still not judging our painting till it's finished, because it isn't yet, but we're nearly there. Yay, because now is the best bit, indeedy. And of course, if you're, you know, if you want to paint this one, I'll show you how to do the background as well. But if you're just painting your tree, it's just good practice. If you want to have, before you do it, put a background color on. Make sure your background color is dry. You can do a nice simple blue background, or maybe a simple sunset background, but just make sure it's all dry first before you put your tree on. I'm just showing you the tree today, so I haven't done a background. But you can put any colors you want on. Actually, I might just put a bit more of the light green in there. It just looks a bit like there could be some more of those random sort of just stray ones here and there, just because I like a bit of difference. Makes it look a bit more lively then. Oh, see, the thing about painting is you can just keep going. It's just, you lose yourself in it. I love painting. It's so much fun, and I love sharing painting with you guys. I love sharing the joy and the happiness that painting brings. It's awesome. And then of course you get that satisfaction of a painting created as well. Okay, so now the best bit. We want to not clean our brush. We want the colours to blend a bit, but give it a wipe. All right, give your brush a wipe, get most of the paint off, and we go straight for red. Yes, and we're going to essentially just create our blossoms. Now you want to use a lot of paint. You want to put it on nice and thick. All right, and we're going to put all our blossoms on. And again, it's just short little strokes, and you do not want to go over your strokes too many times because you'll blend it in with the green. We want these reds to stay nice and bold. You can see I'm just using little short strokes. All right, and I'm just going over it once, and those reds just pop like woohoo! Look at that awesome Pohoot magic. I've got, actually, my pohutukawa tree is getting trimmed next week. Oh, I'm a little bit sad, but it's getting really tall, and it's just getting a little bit dangerous in the wind. We get some pretty full-on winds here at the studio, and it's needing a bit of a trim for its own safety, and of course my view's getting a bit blocked as well. But Just going to keep going with this. Now, keep in mind where you've created these little shapes, all right? The tops of all of those shapes is where your blooms will be. You don't want to just uniformly put blossoms over the entire thing. It just looks a little bit odd, and it's not how a tree blooms either. It kind of blooms in patches. It doesn't sort of bloom evenly across the whole tree. All right, so you just want to keep dipping your brush in paint. As you do your strokes, you'll see that you're picking up some of the colour from underneath because it's still wet. So just keep dipping your brush in the paint, and your red, adding red, so that you keep your red as pure as you can. I mean, you do want it to pick up a little bit of colour because then it'll look like, you know, the leaves, the colour of the leaves behind it and stuff. We just sort of keep blending, keep dabbing your reds on, nice and thick, and slowly your tree is coming to life. A few around the edges, and this is like the best, most awesomest bit. It's like tree is now alive. Yeah. Now I've gone off the page on that side. I quite like that. I say page, I mean canvas. I've gone off piste, which I like doing as well when I'm skiing. That's a whole nother thing. And again, remember, don't just completely evenly space your blossoms. You can see on my original here, there's gaps and there's concentrations of blossoms in certain places, and you know, bits of green here and there, just because that's how a pohutukawa tree is. And at some point you need to stop. All right, that's another thing I say in the studio a lot, and in my virtual paint parties, that you know, don't judge your painting till it's finished, but also know when to stop. It's one of the hardest things, is you think, oh, just one more stroke, one more stroke, one more stroke, and at some point you've just gone too far. So even though it's fun, if you want to do more strokes, start a new painting, because at some point you're going to get it exactly looking good, and you'll be like, yeah, wow, that looks amazing. And then you'll keep going and you may lose it. I know, because I've done it too many times. It's just, you get lost in the joy of it. Okay, I'm thinking I'm almost there. I might just do a little bit more of a concentration of reds up here, just at the tops of all the blossom, bunches of branches. And I think I'm good. A couple around the side here. I think I'm good. Yeah. So there we have it. Ta-da. Oh, see, I can't stop either. It's just so enjoyable. But no, I'm going to stop. I've stopped. So, how did you all enjoy that? So that is our finished pohutukawa tree. Voila, in full bloom. Look at that awesome blooming pohutukawa tree. In full bloom. Yay. Like literally still red, wet blossoms. I'm very happy with that. And of course, when you put it on nice and thick, you get that real thick texture, and it just looks really good. And you get a little bit of 3 dimensions on your painting as well, because of the thickness of the strokes. Now, hopefully you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, like it, share it, tell others about it. I'd love to share the fun of painting with other people as well. And I'd love to see what you've painted as well. So, you know, share your pics in the comments below once you've done them. And do look out for next week's Hearty Tips. I haven't decided what I'm going to paint yet, but it might be something from Castle Point, a lighthouse. I might do a lighthouse, show you how to paint a lighthouse. I haven't decided yet. But yes, if you loved this and you'd like to create the full Aotearoa summer painting, a larger version, I'll be teaching this in the studio, a larger canvas, very soon on the 13th of March. You'll get all your supplies given to you, included canvas, paints, etc. and afternoon tea. Yum. So that's on March the 13th. Pop over to there, heartforart.co.nz, and grab your tickets. All the details are there. Just click on the upcoming events, and actually it's on the homepage too, and the favourites. You'll see it there as well, and all the information. You can grab your tickets. Or if you're not in Wellington, you won't miss out. Don't worry, because this one's on demand. You can do it whenever you like. You can paint it any old time you like. You'll get a full supply list, colour list, my video tutorial, just like this, me showing you step by step, exactly like I just did for the whole painting. So like I said, if you enjoyed this, please like it, share it, and tell others about it. And if you'd like to paint the whole Aotearoa painting with me, or any other of my paintings even, pop over to my website, and I would love to share the joy of creating a whole masterpiece with you. Yes, awesome. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for joining me, and have fun painting your pohutukawas in bloom. Catch you next week for the next episode of Hardy Tips with Silka.